Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of the Living Force, a Youtini Network podcast all about Shadow of the Sith today. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me are a couple of my very good friends, starting out with Dr. Corey Helton. Happy Sunday. How you doing?
I am doing excellent, man. Thanks for having on. I'm excited to chat about this upcoming book with a very special person who I have enjoyed their Twitter presence and promotion of this book for the last couple of weeks, and really pleased to see how hardcore everybody's really looking forward to this book. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, as we release this book is out today, so I hope as you're watching this, you are very excited, and your pre-order is either on your doorstep or in your Kindle. And of course, we have Mr. Wes Jenkins is here to help us out. Wes, how are you?
Hey, hello everyone. Super excited. Finally, some Sith lore that we can get into. I've been missing it in canon, and thank God our special guest has written that for us.
Yes, some Sith lore about a Sith Lord, and it's all kinds of confusing. But of course, we also now want to welcome our special guest, featured in both From a Certain Point of View novels, Stranger Things, the Dishonored franchise, Elementary, original novels like Empire State, Cold War, and of course, the brand new Star Wars Shadow of the Sith. It's Adam Christopher. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here.
Of course. It was such a pleasure to run into you a little bit at Star Wars Celebration recently, and then you took the, I think, 87-hour trip back home, or however long it took you.
Luckily I was unconscious for most of it, so that's the best way to travel.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we're excited not only to hopefully see you next April when we all try to get over to London ourselves, but of course chat today both about your Star Wars history and of course about Shadow of the Sith. So I think that's enough of us prattling along. Let's dive right in.
So we want to break ground here to see where it all started. How did Star Wars first enter your life?
So I am the classic child of the 80s. I am exactly the right age where I grew up with Star Wars and Transformers and G.I. Joe and Master of the Universe and Mask. Coincidentally, all the stuff that I still love today, right?
Sure,
I
right.
have not changed
Yeah.
at all. And I think because my dad was really into science fiction, so he kind of got me introduced to Star Wars quite early. In fact, he took me to see Star Wars, and I've worked this out. It was August 1978. So I'm from New Zealand.
Wow.
And back in those days, that's not the original release, but movies kind of came and then they went away, and then they came back for a repeat run.
Yeah.
So this is August 1978, and I was 6 months old. And
Holy smokes.
but that's a terrible idea. It's do not take a 6-month-old to a movie full of explosions and spaceships and loud stuff. So I have to apologize to anyone who was there 44 years ago. And then I was really lucky because he worked in advertising, and he used to make business trips to Taiwan and Hong Kong and Japan, and he would bring back toys that you couldn't get in New Zealand.
Wow.
Now, this is totally privileged, super Star Wars childhood. I'm not pretending otherwise. I was super lucky, but I had, quite a collection of toys.
Please tell me you still have some of those available.
It's one of those things where you kind of drift away, and then
Sure.
I think a friend of mine who was really into Star Wars, he bought most of them off me. I think I was at university, so they're in a good. I'm happy they're in a good place.
Okay.
It's not like they disappeared in a garage.
Okay, they're loved.
Yeah.
They're loved.
Yeah.
Good.
So that was basically it. And we used to watch Empire Strikes Back every weekend, because again, my dad would bring home a video machine from his work on a Friday night, because video machines were sort of not that common at that point.
Yeah.
And whether we did a local video rental store, so he would stop off and get Empire Strikes Back on the Friday night with the video machine. I would watch it 12 times over the weekend, and that was it. That was my childhood for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. It's like
Wow.
Empire Strikes Back 10 times at a weekend, because to me that was the best thing I could be doing. Like that is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
was my favorite movie.
Uh-huh.
Why would you not do that? I mean, come
I
on.
love
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a child of the 90s, I had a slightly more consistent VHS player, but it was the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
those old school half-faced VHSs. The amount of times I
Yeah.
rewound that Empire Strikes Back with the Stormtrooper on it for some odd
Oh, right.
reason. Of all characters, that was the only character. But yeah, best way to spend an afternoon, no question.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was it. So like super lucky, but here I am. It's like
Yeah.
It worked.
40 years
Yeah.
later, like, hey, I wrote a Star Wars book, so it kind of worked out, I think.
Yeah, I
Listen,
think
this
so.
that's like 6 months old, being in a Star Wars theater. That's like, it's probably like in your genetics somehow at this point. Like that's like developmental age of children.
It's
So
something.
yeah, it's totally in there. Well, let me ask you about your writing experience a little bit. So you've written for a number of different IPs, Stranger Things, which I'm a huge fan of Stranger Things. Me and my wife were really, really into it. You've written Dishonored, Elementary, a whole bunch of other stuff. What is it about like kind of pre-established IPs, universes that sort of calls to you as an author? Why do you like to like play in that playground?
I think for me, I really enjoy that kind of work because, like, for example, if you write, we'll call it original fiction, which is my own stuff, which is not set within, Star Wars or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're writing a book, maybe it's 100,000 words, which is quite long. It has to make sense. It has to have a story logic. Has to have a strong narrative. You have to create characters that people will be interested in, and those characters have to change. And it has to be entertaining and well written. Like lots of things going on that you have to kind of get when you're writing your own stuff. When
Right.
you're doing something like Star Wars or Dishonored or Stranger Things, you're doing all that, but you've got another job, which is using characters and settings that not only people know very well, but that they love like to death. So
Yeah.
you have to do all that stuff that you're doing in a book normally with characters that already exist. So for me, I really enjoy it because it's a real challenge. If you get those characters wrong, someone is going to notice instantly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like you're going to see it. And I
Right.
think we've all probably read books where like that hasn't quite worked for whatever reason, but because they haven't got that, whatever that X factor is of the IP, if it's Star Wars or Stranger Things, there's something about it which makes it a Star Wars book or a Stranger Things book, even regardless of like using Luke and Lando or other characters. So for me, it's like that is really cool because you kind of use different parts of your brain for different kinds of writing. Not all authors like doing kind of IP stuff because it has that extra level and that extra layer of, it's not difficulty, but it's like an extra thing. It is a layer of work that you have to kind of do.
You
But
have
like,
some
I love it.
You have some responsibility to behold,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Just that, like you said, that extra
Well,
layer.
Yeah, because like I grew up reading Doctor Who books. Again, I was watching Doctor Who on TV, and New Zealand television was behind by like 10 years. So I was getting old. I was getting old school Doctor Who at exactly the right age. And then I was reading the books because my school library had like all the Doctor Who books. So that was the first stuff I was reading and really a fan of. And I wanted to be a writer because I wanted to write Doctor Who books. So when it came sort of years later to doing Elementary, which was the first tie-in novels I'd written, I was like channeling like my favorite Doctor Who authors.
Wow.
saying, this is it. Like I need to really nail this book because this is what I wanted to do. I was a huge fan of Elementary, and
Sure.
that was when I realized that I could actually use that kind of fan in me to really get to grips with the characters, because it's all about characters. Like if using Elementary again as an example, if you tune in any week, like the story or where you are in the season or whatever, it doesn't really matter. People were tuning in because they wanted to see what Johnny Lee Miller as Sherlock Holmes and Lucy Liu as Dr. Watson were going to do that week. What mystery were they going to solve? How were they going to do it? So it's the characters and the people that, we're lucky with tie-ins because we have some amazing actors who have portrayed these characters. So if you can capture that in the book, then that's kind of job done.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what's been so fun, even in the lead up to like Shadow of the Sith. Like, I mean, you've been, like Corey said, been doing such a great job kind of sharing your process online, but there's so much fervor from the fan community by like, what are Luke and Lando gonna do? Like as someone who has read it, no spoilers, obviously. There's a lot of plot involved to it, which is also great. But there is something so special about opening up a page and be like, Master Luke Skywalker is at his temple, and it's like, yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I so love that you actually mentioned Doctor Who, because as a I'd say more of a Whovian a few years ago, I'm a little behind myself, but a huge Doctor Who fan myself. I know recently you've written for Doctor Who through Big Finish. I know like they've done a lot of great stuff, and I can't imagine as a kid who grew up reading those books how cool that was to kind of dive into that world properly there. So tell us a little bit both about kind of how that felt now as you know, looking back to your younger self, but also just selfishly, who is your doctor and why? I always find that fascinating.
Yeah, I think, well, my doctor, I think, is probably the third Doctor, John Pertwee, but because that was what I was watching, because as I said, New Zealand TV was 10 years behind. So I was in the mid-80s watching kind of early to mid-70s Doctor Who. So it's what I kind of grew up watching. Yeah, completely the wrong age for that. But hey, that's
sure.
Yeah, but I think, getting to write Doctor Who, I did an audio sort of like a long short story called The Dream Nexus, which came out through Big Finish in May this year. Was like, I don't want to say bucket list and you just kind of tick it off, because that means you're just kind of making a list. But really, it's like, that was it. I mean, Star Wars is Star Wars, and obviously Star Wars is the top of the tree, really. But personally, as a kind of side thing, Doctor Who was like, I want to do a Doctor Who something. So that was really cool. And of course, it was a sixth Doctor story. It's Colin Baker. And it's kind of weird because like that is not the Doctor I expected to have written for my first ever Doctor Who thing. But I love Doctor Who. And again, it's like, okay, this is my first official Doctor Who, and I wrote it, and then I realized, I can actually capture the Sixth Doctor. And it goes back to what I was saying before. It's like, it's all character. If you can, doesn't matter what part, even if it's Star Wars, doesn't matter what part of Star Wars or era in the kind of saga timeline, if you capture the characters in the setting, then you're kind of onto a good thing.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, especially with Doctor Who and Star Wars, because they're both such generational properties at this point. I mean, obviously Doctor Who has been lucky enough to have all different incarnations. Like I personally, Tennant's mine, because that's again the age I was.
Yeah.
And we've talked to folks like Kevin Scott on the show, and he has his Doctor, because obviously in the UK, kind of a big deal when he was growing up with Doctor Who. And Star Wars very similarly now. I mean, there's generations where, Rey is their Luke, and it's just so beautiful to kind of see, how those characters can kind of just keep us going over the decades.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing. Like, since Star Wars Celebration, you see young people like cosplaying as Rey and characters in the sequel trilogy, and you really realize it's like, Star Wars is something that you kind of pass down to people.
We loved that, man. It was that was so inspiring to see so many children in like sequel characters, and like that is their introduction to Star Wars, and that's what they're going to remember. It's like their Star Wars, that's what got them in. So that's always so inspiring to see. And like at Celebration on one of the days, I went to a panel which was the creatures of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So we're watching this, and they had like a home movie from the production. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, we're a bunch of middle-aged people sitting in this room watching this 40-year-old home movie going through the creature workshop. Next door, or down the hallway, they were announcing the second season of Visions. So it's like, this is all this, and I was like, this is Star Wars. It's crazy. This is for everybody. And Star Wars has this ability to kind of, well, like Doctor Who, regenerate itself for new generations, which is, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that about Star Wars. It's so multi-generational, man. We talk to people all the time. It's like, Yeah, like so now even it's like my grandparents took me to see Star Wars for the first time,
Right.
you know, which is crazy. It's crazy to even consider that. It's like, we were all prequel kids here, so like it's so interesting to hear. This is just going to go on forever, I guess. It's going to be just part of human history. Like
yeah.
100 years from now, they're still making Star Wars stuff.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
Dr. Who,
like,
probably.
I know
Absolutely. The
exactly,
38th
and Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I know they won't be saying my grandparents. They'll be saying my ancestors watched Star Wars. Right?
So speaking of kind of the various trilogies, you were involved in From a Certain Point of View, the very first one, and I have a very special place in my heart for that book because I love that book. It's very easy to get into because if you've seen A New Hope over and over and over again, you can pick out those little pieces in each one of those stories. But like you were saying with characters, what inspired you to pick like those specific characters from End of Watch, like Commander Pamela Paul?
Yeah, that story or that scene in Star Wars, I really wanted to do. I kind of knew immediately that it had to be that scene, the other side of that conversation when Han and Luke are rescuing Leia and it all goes wrong. Doesn't all go wrong, but like there's an incident, shall we say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, but everyone's fine. We're all fine here.
yeah.
Now, I was also aware that like that had been done really well on. Is it like Robot Chicken? Adult Swim?
Yes.
Yes, you're right.
Which is like fantastic. So
Yeah.
I was going to do like the serious version of that.
Mhm.
And again, it's like, what kind of point of view do you have? It's a scene that we know so well, like one of the greatest and most memorable scenes from that movie. This kind of moment of weird lightness in the middle of like a life or death situation.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah, what would the other side of that be? Because also, we don't see them. We hear a voice over the comms of the Imperials. But yeah, what's going on? So it was the whole thing of just the Death Star is enormous and the Empire is huge. And it's like, okay, the Empire is evil, but a lot of the people are kind of just doing their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on my 9 to 5, and
Yeah,
yep,
I'm
about
out.
time to go.
That's it. Let someone else handle it.
Yeah.
Just kind of what she does. Although, yeah, I like to think that she actually realized the error of her ways and managed to escape before it kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
'Cause
Well,
again, it's
kind
like-
of. No, go ahead.
I was saying, well, it's only a short story, but if you can get a character that works, like you kind of feel for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're huge fans of those books too. Those anthology books are so much fun, and it's such a great way to kind of like low risk bring in a whole bunch of new authors too, to kind of see what it's like, how creative they are when they explore this universe and stuff too. So it's been really fun to sort of speculate, I guess, of different authors you see that, they get one or two short stories, and it's like, are we going to get a novel in 3 years? That's kind of how it tends to go, it seems. So like those are super, super fun projects. Yeah. Well, speaking of those things, changing gears just a little bit, we recently met, a couple of us recently met you at Star Wars Celebration, and you were hanging around the Del Rey booth with this giant poster of this new novel that you wrote. So what was it like being constantly surrounded by people that are really, truly, genuinely excited? I mean, I don't know if there's not a lot of situations in which you can just be so thrust into that niche group. Like this is literally 1,000 people that are very interested in this very specific project that I get to talk to in person before it even comes out. So what was that like, kind of being around that?
Yeah, it was really cool. That was my first Star Wars Celebration. I do things like San Diego Comic-Con regularly, and at one San Diego, when the Stranger Things novel was out, they had the exhibit hall there is enormous, and they have these suspended rotating banner things like over the exhibit hall, and one of them had the Stranger Things novel, which was my first experience of like, that is really weird, but also really cool because that's actually yeah. And then of course, Star Wars, I go to the Del Rey booth and there's this enormous blow up of the cover. It's kind of, I don't know, as a fan, I'm like fainting. And as a pro, I'm just like, okay, I'm here to do my job. So
Right.
you kind of, you have that kind of weird duality. I mean, I've been doing it long enough that I can kind of like control myself. But, well,
Which is
but the
helpful.
thing is, I was signing posters. This is the weird thing, right? And this is going to sound super cheesy, but I was signing cover posters. And for some reason, I thought, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to whoever, may the force be with you. And then there's a booth next door, had a DJ who had been playing just music. But then they decided to play the Star Wars theme for some reason. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a Star Wars convention. And the Star Wars theme is booming. And I've got this poster, which is my book, and I'm writing, May the Force be with you. And I'm just like, is this real? Like,
Yeah.
All the stars have aligned.
this is happening. And I don't know what's going on, but I have a poster. So,
That's super cool to
crazy,
hear,
man.
though.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's one of those moments, it's when you're a kid and you take the wrapping paper tube and you're like, this is my lightsaber and someday I'll be a Jedi. And yeah, you get John Williams scoring you in front of the book about Luke and
Right.
Lando that now happened. Like that,
Yeah.
these are things
Yeah.
now that have happened in Star Wars. Like it's such a great moment.
Yeah.
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 It's even like secondhand. It's just so it gives me chills thinking about it, and of course it's all based around the book. So let's talk about the book itself, right? So Shadow of the Sith again out today. I'm gonna keep reminding you folks. I know you pre-ordered. I know you did, but in case your friends didn't, make sure you order that book today. Where did the idea for Shadow of the Sith first come from, and how did the whole process, whether email, phone call, like how did this start for you?
Well, I got an email. I'd been doing some work on another book for The Mandalorian, which was going to be really cool, but we kind of had to let it go. So there was kind of a bummer, but at the same time, they're like, well, we've got this other book, which maybe you might be interested in. And it was really, the only brief was that scene, that story that Lando tells to Rey in The Rise of Skywalker, where he says, oh, me and Luke were chasing this old Jedi hunter, Ochi of Bestoon, who was looking for a clue to a wayfinder. No Ochi, no wayfinder. And that was it. It's like, well, clearly that, go and write the story. That is an adventure waiting to be told.
Yeah.
And it was cool because I remember when I first saw The Rise of Skywalker in the movies, that really kind of jumped out at me because I thought, why, that's really cool, but like Luke and Lando, like that's a really kind of
interesting pairing.
Yeah.
It's like, and I was already imagining like what they would kind of get up to, and this is like, well, I don't know how many couple of years before I even had an inkling that I'd do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that was it, and they kind of let me go for it because that's all he says in the movie.
Yeah, that's it. It's like one line.
Yeah, that's all. That's all we've been harping on since seeing the movie. Like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more to this.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff. I think that's the fun part about the expanded universe that all of us have always really loved. Is like you take one line and just totally run with it. And there's so many references to that. I mean, the Kenobi show is going strong right now, and it's so amazing how many tiny little flashbacks from episode 4 that we're getting fulfilled now. And like, I think that's one of the most fun parts about fans is you get to sort of speculate about what those stories are. And it's so cool to be invited, I guess, to kind of tell such a important story, even though it is just one tiny little line. That's so cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, I always go back to the, I fought it alongside your father in the Clone Wars. It's like, Alec Guinness didn't know what the Clone Wars were. And now there's 7 seasons. Like, it's just so funny that now this book, this book is that. I mean, you got to basically say, all right, now every time someone reads your book and then they go watch The Rise of Skywalker, their mind will instantly copy and paste this 450-page tale into that 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I love that.
Your new book is Shadow of the Sith. There is a lot of darkness, but there's also a lot of light. So you add in Sith eternal cultists that kind of they're layered on top of like young Rey's blanket, which is super cool. Just the way you write that. So how important is it for you to add in like the opposites of both light and dark?
Yeah. So Rey and her family are in a lot of danger. But they're also very hopeful because even if we know what's going to happen to them, they don't know what's going to happen to them, which is incredibly obvious to say. But I was really aware of that as I was writing it, that, Star Wars is about hope and it's about redemption, and they are really doing their best as a family. And they're just, whatever their backgrounds, they are ordinary people in the galaxy facing an extraordinary danger through no fault of their own. Like nothing that they did has caused any of this. It's just because of who they are. So that kind of, I don't know if it's a juxtaposition, but that kind of the two sides of this kind of the good family and the love and the hope. And like they're doing the best, absolutely doing the best.
Yeah.
They're desperate and afraid, but they're holding it together for Rey. And then the other side, you've got, Ochi with the Sith blade, and you've got Kaiser, who's kind of possessed by this mask, who are like, I mean, Kaiser is like straight out of a horror movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Ochi is kind of, he's interesting because like he's evil and he's obsessed. So he's a villain with an obsession, which is like a dangerous combination.
Yeah,
And especially
sure.
because Sith, I mean, this is not spoilers, you can work it out from the movie, but like, the Sith Eternal are using that obsession of his to get him to do the job.
Yeah.
And he will stop at nothing. And he's got nothing to lose because he's going to get he thinks his ultimate kind of prize. So, yeah, it's like, I mean, you see it in Star Wars, like the original trilogy, Luke is a farm boy from Tatooine, and he's going to destroy the Death Star, which is like the machine of the Empire, which is the biggest thing in the galaxy, kind of thematically. It's all about little people doing great things. Again, spoilers, but Rey's parents kind of don't make it, but right, but like it's not a happy ending, but then it's not to say that they're not trying to do their best.
Yeah.
And like you can't have, although a lot of kind of elements from the Rise of Skywalker, we know how they turn out. Even in the whole sequel trilogy, we know what happens with Ben, we know Luke, we know what happens to Han, but that doesn't mean that there's this kind of grinding inevitability of their story. There is still something to say and a story to tell about these characters. So with Rey's family, although we know what's going to happen, I tried to it kind of comes out of the blue in a way, because they're making plans and to protect Rey, and they're doing really well. They're always aware that they just have to make one mistake and it's kind of all over.
Yeah.
And then when it does happen, it's like it just happens. Like they're not like it's almost sudden. Like, oh, okay, actually they made a mistake, and well, they didn't even make a mistake. Well, I suppose they did. If I think about it. It's like, well, and again, it's like this is what happens. Like in life, in our lives, we don't know what's going to happen. So I tried to really put that into the book, into their story.
Yeah, and it definitely shows, and it's interesting. As we're recording this, it just happens to be Father's Day over here. And as I was reading this book, I was really struck by Dathan, especially as a character, because I think we see, like, obviously there's a lot of commentary on parental relationships in Star Wars, like Luke Vader and all these things, but it's a lot of, like, lost relationships, then maybe they find each other, Han and Ben, that kind of thing. But the way you write Dathan, especially in this book, the way he looks at his wife and looks at his daughter, really struck me, because it made me realize that we haven't gotten this as much. Like the actual father is just like you said, I'm doing my best. I love my wife. I love my child. I'm so worried about messing up because I love them. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've touched the importance of, honoring the legacy of your parents, but it's been so rare that we just see he's just a scared dad. And I actually loved that. I thought that was really, really affecting.
Yeah, and like also he's seen a better life. He has this unique and extremely troublesome childhood, obviously growing up on Exegol. I mean, that's a nightmare planet.
Yeah.
And he gets away and he sees what could be, so he's very aware of what there is to lose. And he's aware of his own legacy, which again is not his fault,
No.
None of it's their fault. which
Yeah.
is the sad part.
It's the epitome of you can't pick your parents.
Yeah.
And,
I never even
you
thought
know?
about growing up on Exegol, what kind of life you would lead after that.
Yeah,
Of course, it would be
exactly.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get a bit of a hint of that in the book. You know, we kind of see a little bit, but even that is like it's hard to imagine what
Yeah.
how horrible it would be.
Yeah, you read the scenes in like in Ray Carson's Most Wanted, she shows like Han's growing up on Corellia, and now I'm like, Han, shut up. You are fine. Okay? Comparatively to Exegol. You're all right.
Yeah.
You're all right.
Well, now changing gears just a little bit to talk a little bit more about sort of the writing style of the book. You know, we have kind of a review team at Youtini, and like several people all kind of read the books, and most of them are all finished with it. And I've kind of looked at some of their notes and stuff. Something that really stood out about this particular book is you kind of really play around with a lot of different writing styles. It seems like. You know, you have different characters experiencing thrilling chases. There's force visions and even kind of voices in their own heads. Like, how do you find a literary voice for so many different angles and different sections of the novel as a writer?
I think it comes from experience. So again, I've been doing it long enough that when I was writing different characters, they each kind of fell into their own sort of style. So it's almost not something that I think about now. You know, and it goes back to the fact that, you know, when they want people to write Star Wars who kind of know what they're doing. And I'm not trying to gatekeep or sound like I'm important, but they need experienced writers because sometimes in a book like this, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of different points of view and a lot of different character kind of themes even. So, you know, Kaiser is very spooky, ethereal, and Dathan is very kind of pragmatic and in awe of Miramir in a way. You know, Lando and Luke are friends, but they see the galaxy in a completely different way, which is what makes them great when you put them together, because they kind of really it's like two pieces of a puzzle that kind of lock together, and then suddenly you've got this new thing. So yeah, and especially because I knew that there was going to be so much in it, and that it's, you know, it's quite a long book, and I was writing it from the point of view of like, this is episode 6.5. If this is between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, in this huge section of the timeline that we've had so few kind of experiences of.
Yeah.
There's comics, their books, but really this is new stuff. And to have a book that kind of has these like tentpole moments in the saga, like there's important things that happen, which is not always the case with the book. Sometimes you just can't do that. So I was very lucky with the opportunities that I could use. So I made it as big and as bold and as cinematic as possible.
Yeah.
So I think, and again, going back to being an experienced writer, knowing that from the beginning, it kind of came out that way as I was writing it. I'm not saying it's easy to do, and it's one thing, you know, you got your outline and you got, you know, revisions, and you got your draft, and then you do another draft. So it all kind of develops, and you can start to see where things are going. And like, I think with Kaiser, I kind of turned up the horror a bit. Because, well, and especially because like I realized that not spoilers, but like the environment that she's in, she lives in this kind of ruined spaceship. I was like, okay, it's a ruined spaceship. It's kind of creepy and full of droids. But then it's like, actually, it's like a ruined castle or a tomb. So if I call it something like the Sepulchre, which is what it's kind of referred to as, that then sets something else going in your mind. For me as a writer, but also for the reader. It's like, this is bad news.
Yeah, I love that, and it's so clear. You know, you talking about it, like knowing the settings, it all makes so much sense. And like you said, there's so much lore that got to be expanded on that we haven't seen yet. Like Rise of Skywalker, even though it's been about 3 years almost now since its release, a lot of that stuff has kind of been untouched as far as future stuff goes. I mean, let it settle for a while, obviously give some time. But this book really does take that baton and run with it. And you also expand a lot of work from other authors. I know that like the Star Wars author community is one of our favorites because it seems so like tight knit, and a lot of you interact with each other. There's a few Easter eggs that I'm not going to spoil on here, but are very fun nods to other writers, which I loved a lot. But you also took characters from other works, like very specifically, like the Aftermath trilogy by Wendig. You've talked a lot about stuff that Kevin Scott has done. So what did it mean to you not only to take things from Star Wars mythology and lore and expand them, but also like characters made up by folks that like like people that you will interact with, to take their creations and then take them kind of like the next step of their journey?
Well, everything that I put in, I mean, there were deliberate choices, but they were also kind of organic choices. So, you know, using Kaiser, who was such a great character from the Aftermath interludes. Again, it's like, you know, Star Wars has this great tradition of the kind of the character in the background that you see for 5 seconds, which gets the action figure that looks really cool, but like you don't know anything about this person at all. I think that goes back to my love of Empire Strikes Back, because the bounty hunter scene, those were the toys that I played with, because not only did they look cool and stuff, but these were characters that we knew nothing about. Because the movie, like, obviously Boba Fett goes on to develop stuff, but for the others like Bosk and IG-88 and Dengar, and it's like, who on earth are these people? And what are they like? And what are they doing? So when it came to like, when I was 8 years old playing with the toys, those are the figures, because I could create their story because we hadn't seen it. So there was a space there for me to kind of use them. And it's almost the same thing using things from other books or comics. If there's a cool minor character, you know, Kaiser, who was going to be the villain in my book, because we had a little bit of a backstory and a little bit of a character, and there was very clearly a path that she was going to go on that was worth exploring. And then I used things like, you know, there's some references to Dark Legends by George Mann, because again, I read Dark Legends, which is like a collection of fairy tales within the Star Wars universe.
Oh yeah, love that book. Love that book.
But like one of the stories is so, well, it's about Exegol. It's like, it fitted so well with the themes I wanted for Shadow of the Sith that there's no way I was going to not use it. So I used it. So although I'm like a Star Wars geek, and I love putting in everything that I can that's kind of cool. And like, if I thought, you know, if I was reading this, I'd be like, oh, I recognize that a little bit. But it's important for this kind of work that, you know, it's for everybody. If people don't see a reference or don't recognize something from another work, it doesn't matter. Because if it's important, it's explained in the book. If it's not important, it's just a planet or a character or a spaceship or whatever. But those who can recognize it will kind of get a little extra buzz out of it. And then if they're kind of interested, you can go and read Dark Legends or Aftermath or whatever else I've used, like the 1978 Los Angeles Times newspaper comic strips, which are referenced at least 3 or 4 times in the book.
Holy smokes. That is quite the pull.
Yes. We won't let Charles know about this. He's the one that pulls all our Easter eggs for the book roundtables. So kind of speaking of these characters that you brought in, or that you written about in this book. So do you have a favorite that you wrote? So whether it be in this book with Kaiser, Young Rey, Ochia Bestoon, do you have a favorite that you wrote? It could be Luke or Lando, or is there one that you haven't written about yet that you would like to write about?
My favorite character that I wrote in Shadow, which seems inconsequential, but he actually plays like a completely pivotal role in the story. I'm not going to reveal his name, but he goes by the code name of Steadfast. And he's in it for like 2 chapters. But there was just something about him when I was writing it that was like a joy, because he's such a jerk, basically. And he kind of just came to life. And again, it's a character from Rise of Skywalker that he's in, like, suddenly we're introduced to a character that apparently has been there for always because of who he is. So again, it's like, well, who is he and what is he doing? And what was he doing 20 years ago? Clearly he was important enough. He was around somewhere. But again, like, it's kind of minor in the course of the book because he's only in it for a little bit, but he was so cool.
Yeah, I love those pulls of the details of the small characters that don't really show up that lot in the movies, but they play such a pivotal role.
I mean, hey, like, Bail Organa is my favorite character of all time. So he started as a background nothingness, and now he's, of course, the hero the galaxy deserves. So, take some time.
Well, it's like one character I'd really like to write is actually Vader, but having now, we're almost at the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus, and the way that they have portrayed Vader is so amazing. I don't know how I could possibly compete with that because like Vader he's cool, he's evil, but he's cool, and he's awesome, and he's powerful, and we know that. But now we're like, wow, he's actually like another level. So
sadistic, in a way that we've never seen. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that episode, man, I could just watch it again.
They're really solidifying. They're really solidifying Hayden as Vader in those episodes. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, as we kind of wrap up here a little bit, I want to ask you a question that we ask all the authors that come on our show, especially with their first time coming on, and kind of going back to your original Star Wars introduction, right? I mean, you were introduced as a kid, and it seems like almost everybody that we've ever talked to, they have some really cool childhood, introduction to Star Wars, right? And Star Wars is so rich with this idea of legacy, right? Like the characters all have their own legacy. There is the Skywalker legacy. There's all this legacy. Now that you have written both short stories and now a major footprint on kind of the Star Wars storytelling saga with a novel, an enormous novel, right? Like, you now have left your you've sort of began your own legacy, I guess, in Star Wars storytelling, which is a really cool, profound thing if you think about. So I want to ask you, what do you hope that your own personal legacy is? Whether this is the only project you ever do, or if you do major projects down the road, what do you hope your personal legacy on the Star Wars saga is?
That's a really interesting question. And it's kind of difficult in a way because I managed to do some things in shadow. Like, I named Rey's parents. Now, it's only a couple of names, but that is now part of Star Wars. And as a fan, to be able to contribute to what is the greatest storytelling mythology we have in the modern age, basically, is amazing. Whether it's a small short story or a comic. Like, I did a little 8-page comic for IDW, backup strip in Star Wars Adventures. But again, it was like, this is a little slice of Tally Lintra's life that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
So all of it, even if it's a big thing or a small thing, it's all adding to the kind of storytelling universe. And I would like to think that my contributions mean something. And I don't mean something like it's important, but means something in that, like, it's good. Like, Star Wars is amazing and we all love it. And if I can add something to it rather than take away, that is the legacy.
Yeah.
If I
love that.
If I can write Star Wars stories that the 8-year-old fan that I was would read then or now as an adult, that's it. That's the job done.
I love it.
I love that too.
I love it. Well, hey, maybe in the future, we'll have the Bastoon legacy. We'll fly right alongside the Christopher legacy in the space, and it'll be great. Well, I can say for sure, as people read this, I'm so excited. I know the embargo was lifted this past week. The reviews have been coming in. People are getting more excited, and the floodgates open full on by the time this releases. Before we get out of here, I think also just congratulations. First of all, I mean, this is, like you said, you've been doing this for a while. You've done a bunch of major projects, but I mean, this this hefty guy here is out. It is finished, and it's a really big deal. So congrats on this book. It's really a feat.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we close on out, please let our audience know if they don't already follow you or they don't know what's coming, where can they find you online? And what does the rest of 2022 look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter as Ghost Finder, which is actually Star Wars canon. You can look it up on Wikipedia. You'll find it.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And which means I'm stuck with it now. I can't change it.
Right.
I'm on Instagram as Adam Christopher Writer, which is a far less interesting username than Ghost Finder. Maybe I could change that, actually. Yeah.
Ghost Finder all the way across, absolutely.
Yeah, and my website is adamchristopher.me, which has all my other books and stuff. And I mean, I'm looking forward to San Diego Comic-Con. The book will be out by then, so that'll be fun. And then New York Comic-Con later in the year. I'm working on stuff which will remain secret for now.
There we go.
But like, I'm aware, like, I don't want to keep going on about this and take up too much time, but like, I'm not taking this for granted. It's like, this is my dream and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. And I hope I'm doing something worthwhile for fans like me who want to enjoy Star Wars. And like, you know, not many people can do that. And I'm grateful for that. And every day I pinch myself. It's like, I get to do this.
It's really reflected in your responses. You can tell you're very genuine about Star Wars, and I love that.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see. It shows in the pages. Everyone, as you're watching, go follow Adam everywhere. Go see all the lovely countdowns that have been going off. There's playlists. There's behind the scenes facts. Your feed is just a bunch of love of all things Star Wars. Let us know also what you think about the book, both on Youtini, at Adam on Twitter. Let him know how much you're loving everything. And of course, stay tuned for all things that you need to know about books and comics, because there's one being released about every 4 weeks in Star Wars. So we are getting lots of content. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. May the Force be with you, everybody.